Welcome to all of you on this India Development Debate special for Diwali, and wishing all of you and your families a very, very happy Diwali from the entire team over here. This year, to celebrate Diwali, we thought we'd do something a little different, give you a slice of different kind of information and conversations which would hopefully enrich you this year. So here's what we have planned for you. We're going to start off by talking about Naya Saal, Nayi Shuruaat for the economy. Yes, the economy that we talk about day in and day out right here on ET Now and on the India Development Debate. But what new resolutions can our policy makers think of to reboot the Indian economy in the new year that is expected? We're going to have that conversation first with two top economists who are going to be joining us. Then we're going to take you back into the past with a dash of mythology and what it means in current times. I will have with me author and mythologist Devdutt Patnaik, who will lay out for you why there is this belief that you should buy gold on Dhanteras. What does it really mean? What is the true essence of Lakshmi Puja? It will be a riveting conversation. Do stay tuned for that. And to round it off, how to look at your waistline and not just your bank balance this Diwali, I will have with me celebrity nutritionist Rujuta Divekar, who's going beyond telling you what to eat and what not to eat. She's talking more about food philosophy, so do stay till the very end for that conversation as well. But let me begin by welcoming to our special Diwali studios here, Mr. Madan Sabnavis and Mr. Saugata Bhattacharya. Two top economists who we speak to very often on the show about all things economics. Wishing you both a very happy Diwali and nice to see you in this Diwali attire.
You too. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So the idea of this conversation is fairly simple. We talk about what are the resolutions that can be made to reboot our economy. Saugata, you want to go first. What is your concept of a Naya Saal, Nayi Shuruaat for the Indian economy? What do you hope to see in the next year?
So first, let me compliment you on your excellent choice of subject material for the Nayi Saal, Nayi Shuruaat. So I'm also going to take you back a little back in history. So all this doom and gloom that we have, for good reason. I mean, we have growth has slowed, etc. But if you consider the current growth in the longer, much deeper historical context, I mean, if you look at trends over the last 10 years or so, it's actually not all that bad. I mean, the manufacturing growth that is leading to the slowdown. We have had bouts of manufacturing slowdown even before. Sure, I mean, other things have come in at this point in time. So altogether, consumption, exports, capex, etc., everything has slowed down. But if you look at the overall point, I mean, we are not doing horrendously badly.
Okay.
So that's point one. Second point is we are already beginning to see some green shoots. I know I'm probably being a little bit more optimistic, and which I should be. I mean, on this festival of lights, leading to the festival of lights. But I think we are already beginning to see some green shoots. Inventory levels are down to where automobiles, consumer goods, consumer durables, to where it's supposed to be at a relatively optimal place. At this point in time, I can tell you that production from the automakers, the OEMs, consumer goods makers, etc., will begin to come in. And thirdly, in this limited context, the Q2 GDP numbers that we are likely to see, markets are again predicting a 5% or a sub 5%. I'm telling you it will be a little better because the way volume growths are pretty bad even now. But the way that GDP is calculated, corporate profits are still okay. They are holding up because of whatever cost-cutting exercises, etc. And finally, the last, we were just hearing, I mean, I was at a conference, the amount of work that Indian entrepreneurs, particularly the tech investors that are doing in the fields of artificial intelligence, data science, etc., is absolutely mind-boggling. So, I mean, let me stop here, and this is the future for India.
Okay, so a great optimistic note to kick off on, Saugata. Madan, do you share that optimism? Let's just first set the stage of how you see this next Samvat going.
No, in fact, I would be a bit more cautious, and I think today we're talking of a new year, and it's quite appropriate that we talk of a new year because actually it's the second half of the year, And we economists always keep saying that the second half is a critical time because this is the festival season, the harvest season.
Yeah.
So whatever has happened because of the harvest, whatever happens because we have excess wealth, we'll start spending and the consumption spiral, the consumption cycle will start flourishing. So I think it will be a very important period for us to observe whether all these things really happen or not. I think the good part is, of course, from the point of view of the government, I think it's got its final pat on its back because the World Bank has improved our ranking to 63. Yeah. Which means that it's a kind of a vindication of all the policies which the government has been pursuing for the last 5 years or so. So I think from the policy side, we probably do have the right framework. And the more critical thing is that can anything more be done to change the
Absolutely.
situation?
Yeah.
I seriously doubt it. I think now we will have to wait for the normal momentum which comes from within the economy.
What about all of this talk of push for consumption demand? When we're talking about new resolutions, now it's been up in the air that there will be some kind of a slash on personal taxes, put more hands in, money in the hands of people. You don't think anything can be done?
No,
on
I
the
don't think
demand
at this
side?
particular point of time there are lots of fiscal problems which are there, and we already know that there was some bit of optimism when the budget was drawn up. To top it all, you say around 1.5 lakh crores of giveaways in terms of corporate tax rates. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of cut in the personal tax rate, at least in this particular year. And when we're talking of consumption booming, it's just hoping that you and I have more money to spend. And I think most of the time we keep complaining, saying our increments are not being in order, our salaries have not increased, so therefore we're not consuming. So therefore, it actually remains to be seen whether the consumption spiral really picks up. I think some of the data which we have from the e-commerce side shows that there's been a lot of spending. But we have seen very often when that happens, the regular brick and mortar sales do come down. So the momentum which we have seen in the month of end of September, maybe part of October, needs to be sustained. So I would tend to be a bit more cautious. And again, just to reiterate, I don't think I'm expecting anything more from the government. And I think from the Reserve Bank of India, there'll always be this call of saying cut interest rates, cut interest rates.
It's not really making any, it's not
and I think
really
now there's a
big
realization that monetary policy may not really be mattering that much because just by making loans cheaper for me.
So do you agree with that, Saugata? Just hold your breath and wait. The government's done what they can.
No, I think they probably have room for more. Yes, monetary policy rates will be cut. So even now, given what we expect of inflation, despite the rise in, so hang on to the eating of onions and tomatoes, though. I mean, that probably needs to be kept out of the budget for the food budget for a little while. So other than that, I think monetary policy rates can definitely be cut more. Real interest rates are still very high. Flood the market with liquidity. There is no sign, there is no fear that inflation will begin to surge with the liquidity. Just like the other quantitative easy programs, where market liquidity is anywhere around about a lakh, couple lakh crores every day. So I think maintain that at this level, liquidity will slowly begin to seep into other small parts. Fiscal, yes, room is limited, but I have a feeling the personal income tax. I'm borrowing something from Madan, his very important article today. It's not just a matter of consumption and investment. He's rightly pointed out that the key part, one of the key weaknesses in the system now is sentiment. In other words, from an economist perspective, expectations. That expectation cycle, the loop of the expectation cycle needs to be cut. So I think at this point, even if it is prorated for the second half of the year, I think the government is already beginning to tack off a tax cut. The personal income tax cut, I think this should be front loaded at the second half of the year, if not for the full year itself. There will be a little hit on the fisc, but I think there will be other means of raising revenues that the government is already exploring, maybe encouraging more FII flows, maybe even a foreign currency bond. The government is not. And finally, in terms of the credit, which has emerged as a very major problem, the lack of credit available to MSMEs in particular.
But is it Saugata? Because you look at all the press conference, in fact, that the finance minister had with private bankers and then with public bankers as well, and all of them coming and saying that we have the money, we're pushing the money, but they are facing a problem in demand. People who have to pick up credit have to be sure that they're able to pay back as well.
So it's a combination of both, lack of demand in certain segments and a significant amount of risk aversion in banks. And this was the last point that I was coming into, to reduce the amount of risk aversion and the ability of banks to lend. I think a bad bank, a TARP-like program, troubled asset relief program, like separating the bad assets of the bank into an AMC, into an ARC, or whatever the appropriate structure, I think that is the third leg of policy that the government needs to do at this point.
Okay, so if we were to talk about 2 or 3 things in terms of resolutions that need to be made by our policymakers. What are the 3 things that you would identify, Madan?
See, the first thing I would say is that let's not just harp upon interest rates being the panacea for our cure, because for the problems which we have, because I think that's what we've been doing. So I'll see it's more a case of saying don't do certain things. Don't just keep thinking cut interest rates and let's hope that the economy recovers. It's not going to work that way. Second, I think our financial system needs to be strengthened, and that's not something, I mean, we have policies, we have the regulation which makes sure that it's sturdy. But what Saugata was talking about in terms of the risk aversion, I think as long as that's there, we cannot actually force banks. So don't force banks to lend. In fact, I'm personally not too much in favor of saying that SME loans will not be called NPAs till March 2020.
Yeah,
because we're creating another kind of a
you might be creating a whole new set of NPA cycle once again.
And the third thing is, I'll always feel that even though a fiscal stimulus on its own may not really matter too much, because we are talking of a government with a budget around 27.5 lakh crores, capex of around 3 lakh crores. If I increase it by 1 lakh crores, will it actually make a major difference? Probably not. But I think the government should think about spending more money, because that's the only way in which you're directly adding to more demand, which will create probably a bit of more jobs, which will probably have a kind of a virtuous feedback into your investment. That would be probably the third recommendation that I would make. So don't just harp upon interest rates, don't force banks to lend, and the third thing is the government should continue spending on projects.
What about your 3, Saugata?
So again, I mean, I think the government, remember that, I mean, these are the immediate demand stimulative measures, a little bit of supply tinkering here and there. I think now to get that expectation sentiment back on track, both from an investor perspective as well as from a consumption perspective, I think the government needs to give out signals that it's open to more reforms. I mean, it's already laid out a bold a roadmap for the corporate tax reforms. I think many more reforms of this variety are needed at this point in time. One critical part, I think that's when we talk of a fiscal stimulus, I mean, you know, you can even if you get the resources, you'll need to figure out how to spend the money. I mean, do you want to spend it in rural areas, as
yes.
Professor Abhijit Banerjee is talking about,
yes.
To increase rural demand? Do you want to spend it on urban demand with a tax cut, personal income tax cut? But I think one major thing that the government needs to, and all corporates are complaining about this, a lot of money is stuck with the governments in terms of both GST tax credits for MSMEs, other infrastructure payments, etc. So I think that pipeline needs to be unclogged.
So they need to pay their bills.
That's
basically.
Right. Absolutely.
But for GST credits, etc., especially for SMEs, the finance minister has laid out a timeline.
Right.
So is it about a bit of patience? Because a lot of things have happened. Even the IMF says that maybe next fiscal will be better. So is it just about holding your breath and bringing a bit of that optimism into your own outlook that would make a difference, or is that just being
I think more than
too rose-tinted?
So I mean, optimism is good, but I mean, you can't live on optimism. So
yes.
I mean, I think some cash flows are actually needed.
Optimism doesn't pay the bills.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't pay the bills. So I think some cash flows are probably needed at this point in time. So even if the government has to extend its borrowing arm a little bit, using various other forms of revenue generation, I think it should go that extra distance and make sure that, particularly for MSMEs, you know, the problem is that the large corporates are now are being forced to pay SME bills, because that's one of the key things, that for MSMEs, that 45-day timeline, that was 30-day for pending bills and 60 for the others was paying. And right now it's the large corporates that are paying, and which is the overall system is getting jammed. So I think that's one thing that will be both a sentiment positive as well as a cash flow positive. I think that's what will probably be needed for the government.
Okay, outlook for the next year, just to round off in a message for all of our viewers as we talk about Diwali. And Madan, you don't need to be unnecessarily optimistic just because it's Diwali, but you know, how you see things panning out. Is there a sense that things will get better here on, or worse before they get better?
Because, no, I think I would tend to think that I think things have bottomed out. I think all the bad things which had to happen have already happened. And from now onwards, based on also the fact that we economists always keep talking about a statistical base effect, so things have gone down so badly this particular year that things will only look better in the next year. And also the fact that we've seen that we haven't really seen large-scale unemployment. Maybe employment growth hasn't really picked up, but we're not seeing large-scale retrenchment taking place in the organized sector. It's happened in some sectors like the auto sector, but not it's not prevalent. So I would tend to believe that the worst of it is really over and things will move, but only gradually. So if we're looking at something like growth of around 6.2% this particular year, that's for 1920, we could expect that to move towards 6.5%, 6.75% next year. But it's going to be from the momentum within the economy, and I think as far as the government is concerned, I look more at the government as a person who provides an enabling environment, and I think the government has done superbly on that particular front. I don't really think major things like tax cuts or expenditures is going to bring about acceleration, but they will definitely help.
Okay, so we've been talking about so far resolutions, say, for policymakers and what they should do. What about for corporate India? You know, do they need to play their part as well? Because from the government's perspective, they've laid out the field, and it's now time for corporate India to go out there, show some faith and increase their investments. Private investments is a huge issue as well. Do you think that's a resolution that needs to be made, or just stay more cautious for the time being?
No. I mean, of course, I mean, caution is needed. I mean, you know, I mean, so, I mean, we got into trouble because of the overextended capex that happened in post the global financial crisis with the stimulus. So I think obviously, so you, as Madan said, you can't push people into economic decisions. But you know, I mean, I'm still, the IMF says next year's growth is 7%. Might be a little bit optimistic even on a Diwali day. I mean, you know, so maybe a little bit lower than that. But there are certain sectors that are still doing very well in the segment. I mean, in the country. I mean, we talk of auto, we talk of real estate. Even within real estate, the commercial real estate segment is doing really well.
Yeah.
A lot of MNCs are coming into India, hiring people. You know, I mean, the same skills that I was talking about, data sciences, artificial, a lot of MNCs are coming in and hiring people. I mean, see some of the booming centers around. Cement is doing very well. The urban infrastructure, the demand from urban infrastructure. So, I mean, it's not as if, I mean, we are completely sunk. So I mean, it will take some time to get out. Government needs to start talking with states to try to incentivize investments coming into state governments, effective implementation of execution of policies, etc. So I think the government is doing, and this is the only part which is likely to incentivize the private sector from going ahead and investing.
Last quick word, Madan, on resolution for the corporate sector. Come on, India Inc. also needs to come and, you know, sort of ease the situation, increase salaries if you want to increase demand.
See, India Inc. works on the basis of commercial principles. Their job is to earn profits, and I think they are. It's actually a perfect market-driven enterprise. So therefore, I think they will invest when they need to invest. And I think that's what Saugata said, forcing them to invest right now just to bring up that GDP growth rate to 7% may actually lead to the kind of problems we had in 11-12 onwards when there was over-investment taking place. I think when the moment you're being driven by the market, you're being driven by profit, I think they will take the right decisions at the right time. We need to be patient. As I said, everything is going to be gradual, but we are definitely in the positive direction.
All right. With that, I want to thank both of you for joining us today on this Diwali special on the India development debate, and look forward to another year of feisty debates on the show.
Yes, looking that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.